Hello, and today's revision guide is going to focus on how to write a newspaper report in exam conditions. Here you can see an example question that you might be set in an exam or in class. Write a lively article for your school or college magazine with the heading A Teenager's Guide to Managing Parents. You can see I've highlighted in red the key parts of the question. You've got the text, which is the article or news article that you're being asked to write. You've got the audience implied by the words of school or college there, implying this is for a teenage audience or people of your own age. And then you've got its topic there, or purpose. You are writing a magazine with the heading A Teenager's Guide to Managing Parents. This implies then the purpose is to give information or inform. There might also be, of course, a bit of advice in there. The idea of giving your audience a bit of a hint at what they could do to help manage their own parents. Here's the marking criteria then, as it would stand at GCSE level, worth 12 marks for communication and organisation and 8 marks for vocab, sentence structure, spelling, punctuation. The pass marks around about high band 3 or grade 5 is what that would achieve at the bottom there. So you need about half marks to pass this section of the paper. You'll notice it says to pass it, you just need clear understanding of the purpose, that is to give information in a newspaper article, and the format of the task, so make sure it looks like a newspaper. And on the right hand side it says make sure to use different kinds of sentences, a range of punctuation is used, and you need mostly accurate to achieve the pass, and most spelling etc. is correct. To really do well at this paper, you need to think about effects for the audience, writing a lively newspaper article, make it stand out among the 30 that might be sent in. Okay, this is what you'd expect a newspaper to look like, with the masthead at the top there. You can see the titles there, everything neatly laid out in columns, lots of pictures. Remember, it isn't a real newspaper you're going to be asked about in the exam. It's more like an exam answer rather than actually what a newspaper would really look like. Here then is an example of what it might look like in an actual exam. You can see a catchy title at the top, an introduction paragraph that's fairly short, subheadings in between each paragraph, 2 middle paragraphs so that's slightly longer, and then a short conclusion on the bottom. So many aspects of a newspaper layout, features of a newspaper have been omitted or taken away, just leaving the basics so it doesn't look like a letter and doesn't look like a leaflet in front of you. Okay, here's an example then of a question in black there. Write a lively article, for a lively article for your school's newspaper on the topic of mobile phones and what they should be used in school. And you can see a typical student example there. Sometimes mobile phones are more than an annoyance and necessity. Often phones will go off at the most inappropriate times, etc., etc. There's no sense that this is for a newspaper. It's just a basic response. Here then is more of a response from something more like a student would actually submit. Immediately it's more detailed. It immediately shows that it's trying to be effective for the audience. It's slightly more chatty in its style, and so obviously explains itself perhaps a little bit better and is a bit more engaging for, in this case, its teenage audience. In other words, that's the one you shouldn't be writing, and the one on the right is the one you need to aim a bit more towards. Okay, here's another example, a bit longer this one. Take a look through, get a sense of how this is written, how it tries to engage the audience, think about the type of article it is, the audience and who you think that might be, and of course the purpose. Here's the second example then. Again, pause the video, read this through, think how this is formed, how it's written, and you'll notice this one's probably a higher level than the first one because it has a range of different paragraph lengths there. Some are very short and some are a bit longer. And here's our example then of example answer number 3. Again, pause the video, read it through, answer the questions on the bottom. You've now seen 3 examples then of roughly what a GCSE or exam-based newspaper article might look like. So now let's show example number 4, but talk you through how this might be written. So in this case, it's based around reality television and what people might think of it. It hints that teenagers might be interested in something new and interesting, so immediately the title is linking to our teenage audience. Its first paragraph uses emotive language that grabs the attention, as teenagers have short attention span. Infected sounds dangerous and excited. exciting, sorry. And we have words like verbs like hit, suggesting something aggressive and dangerous as well as sudden, again grabbing the young audience's attention. A rhetorical question is used there because teenagers might be bored by the time they've got through the first 2 paragraphs, and so it's trying to get them to think about the topic. So the best, the highest grades would come from engaging your audience through questions and interesting vocab choices. I might now look at some of the later features in the article. Some there have got arrows next to them. Think about why those particular words or phrases might be used for a teenage audience, again in getting you to think about the way the article is constructed and the way it's written. So what are the basic features that I need in my newspaper article? I need a title, subheadings, captions for any pictures you want to use, a picture box to indicate there would be pictures in the real answer if you were to draw them. It should clearly link to the reader or the audience that you're aiming towards. It reassures the reader by showing understanding in some way, showing that you understand the reader's view of the topic rather than just your own. Might well give advice, but probably indirectly. And it will probably end on a positive feature of some kind. So the first thing you need to do when tackling an exam question or exam task based around newspapers is considering TAP. What text am I going to be asked to write in? Who is the audience I am writing to? And what is the purpose of the writing? So that's text, audience, and purpose. For a writer, the reader's opinion matters more than the writer's. In other words, when you write your article, it is not about your opinion, it's about what you think the reader is thinking as they read it. Well, why is that the case? Because in most pieces of writing, it's all about your opinion. Well, of course, the writer, in this case yourself, wants to sell the paper, and it is the reader who buys it. It is also the case that the writer isn't trying to offend the reader. They have to at least be sympathetic or empathetic to what the reader is thinking and understanding what that reader might be going through. 2 bad examples on the bottom then. I think reality TV is brilliant. If you don't think this, then you're an idiot. Well, obviously it's going to make the reader think, well, I'm not going to read your article then. So that person does not understand what the reader is thinking. Some of them might well disagree. Reality TV is not brilliant. Another bad example, I think my work is an A star. If you think it's an E, then you're wrong. Again, this person isn't thinking about the audience and actually is sounding borderline offensive. So how would you plan your answer to really get thinking about what the reader might be going through or what the reader is thinking? Well, we have at the top box there the question itself. In this case, why is Facebook a problem? So that's my task. Underneath, I might bullet point what the audience is thinking. And I might think, okay, what main points am I going to make here? Why is Facebook a problem? And I might list maybe 4 bullet points as to why Facebook might be an issue. You can see on the right hand side, the next thing I would consider is what might the reader be thinking? What might they think that goes against my argument? What are the good points about Facebook in this case? And then my last box over the right hand side bottom there is how would you defeat this argument? How would you make your reader think differently? Obviously these need to be put quite sensitively to their audience because you want to persuade them to think about the issue that you're facing or the issue you're covering in your article. Okay, we call that the box plan, and that's a very straightforward way of planning your answer to get the most marks possible. So by doing this box grid, you're thinking about the opposite point of view and how this can be countered and exploited. Here's another example then. In this case, an article based around mobile phones. Local head teacher Mr. Forthright insisted the ban on mobile phones was vital to the education of young people at his school. He argues all the bibbing and brumming of phones is a distraction. How can teachers teach if students learn if they continue harassed by silly noises these contraptions make? And then we have the opposite point of view.
However, John Timmins, 42, a local parent and head of the PTA, insists that head teacher's position was unreasonable. Speaking at a parents' meeting last night, he claimed, "Crime against young people is up by 15% in our area. Our children need to be able to call home at a moment's notice. I fully intend to keep sending my son in with his phone." Tempers ran high at the meeting, which nearly 150 parents attended and show their support for Mr. Timmins. As you can see then, it gives both points of view, okay, for mobile phones and against them, and it goes and it lays itself in its answer by paragraphing those opinions. First of all, the positive opinion of why mobiles should stay at home in the first paragraph, and then explaining for a parent's point of view why parents need to why mobile phones need to come into school in the second paragraph. Have a look at that answer then. Where have quotations been used? Where are the statistics used? And have those been embedded into the response? This is around about then a grade 3 to grade 4 minus example. Here's an example topic 2 then. Is school uniform a good idea? Well, I need to consider both points of view here to write my article. So these might be the sentence starters I use when emphasising the good reasons behind a uniform, or the good ideas behind having a school uniform. And then I might use these sentences to say the opposite point of view. Both of these in a newspaper article would be used. So how do you write an introduction? Let's stick with our Facebook idea that we planned earlier, and this is colour-coded how I might write my response. I start off by writing down an opinion on the topic. I would then state in red there how many people have this view. I would then give a question and then answer it. In blue, I would then say what the whole article is going to be about. Number 5, I give a fact or statistic about the topic and explain what it makes us think about. And then in black at the bottom, I would ask another question, which I will answer through the rest of the response. In this case, do we really need Facebook in our lives? That would give me then a 6-sentence introduction. Have a practice of those steps then, now down the left-hand side, to answer the newspaper question, explain why kids aren't tucking into school dinners. Think about how you'd lay out your answer and think about how you'd form your introduction paragraph. So the rest of your answer might well be persuasive. You are trying to persuade your audience to think a certain way or accept another person's viewpoint. You have to be quite polite about it, but these are some of the persuasive features I might want to use, listed down the left-hand side. I've given definitions next, and as you can see, the most interesting part of that table might well be the examples, how exactly you'd write about it. In this case, I've used the idea of school dinners, or the theme of school dinners, to base my examples on. Take a look at these and maybe make some notes. So now we move on to the main body of the report. Write an article for your local newspaper giving your views on how locals support the environment. As you can see, this is the example question I'm using there. It's local newspaper, so this one's for adults rather than teenagers. It gives the topic there of supporting the environment, or supporting the local environment in the area. The next paragraph, this will be around about paragraph 2, might well start with a statistic to prove what you're saying is accurate. You can see there I've got listed down the right hand side some of the parts of an answer you might want to consider. So let's look how this second paragraph would then be formed. Okay, this might be how I start. In this case, I'm going to look at healthy eating to give you an example. 1 in 6 people in the UK are going to be obese by 2017. That's a worrying statistic. That means I would now add in then something about my opinion about that statistic, what I think of that statistic, that every time you walk down the street, every 6th person you meet will be obese. I would now add in red my next section, deliberately thinking about a range of sentence structures.
Because of the severe effects on your health, the government, or the part of the government that sets laws for this kind of thing, has had to spend more of your hard-earned taxes on the NHS, a resource that's already stretched beyond its limits. Surely we would rather save money than stuffing our fat faces with food. So I've given my statistic and then got my audience to think about that statistic and what it actually means. Next up, I use a quote from a professional, in this case in purple. A renowned scientist at the University of Oxford, Professor Sandwich, aptly named, stated the nation is literally eating itself to death. You can see there I've used brackets, exclamation marks and dashes to show my range of punctuation as well. Next, I'd want to give an example. I know a young boy, Billy, who was a healthy year 7, but now can't get up the stairs in his own house in year 9. That isn't because he's ill, suffering or old, it's because he's unhealthy. But what did Billy do to change? He got on a treadmill, listened to the doctors, and made a sensible choice. He wanted a better life, and by year 11 he had one again. So I give, after giving my statistic, then explain that statistic, then give me a quote professional. I then give an example from my own experience. Now I'd want to back up that experience with maybe a quote from a celebrity. Billy, like most boys his age, is influenced by celebrities. The Olympics really affected him. Jessica Ennis, Chris Redgrave et al. Were his role models to help convince him to do the right thing. So I drop in some well-known names of athletes in this case to emphasise the point that I'm making. Now I go on to my positive ending to the paragraph. It was only last week when he ran 10k for the local cancer trust. So I've created my second paragraph. Obviously it's a lot longer than my first one as I show a range of paragraph lengths, and I'm going into quite some detail based around my original statistic about my topic. This then is my third paragraph. You'll notice I've used the same kind of layout in this case, but I've started off with a quote rather than a statistic. So look at this answer and label it due to the advice on the right hand side. Where have I used these skills? Are they all still present and correct? Another example of how it might look on the page, you can see the full answer in this case. How to survive your GCSEs. You've got an introduction there, then it uses subheadings, goes on to explain those. In this case it uses some quite detailed bullet points, top 5 tips for success, and you can see how those are written. And then it's got that really positive end paragraph, again using the subheading easy. Pause the video, give this a read through, get an idea of the flavour of how it's written, how lively it's actually written. So this would be quite a high level response immediately because it's trying to engage the audience in the article itself. You might notice, given all the examples I've given here, that they're all things that link to teenagers' own lives in some way. The exam board will give you a question that suits your own life. They won't try and give you something that's completely out of your field of interest or your own life experience. Okay, can you recognise those points down the right hand side then? I've given 10 bullet points. You might want to label up this slide and think where each of those are being used. Okay, thank you very much for listening to this video. I've given a copy there of the marking criteria just to remind you so you can check the work you've done today and some of your own example answers based on that. Okay, thank you very much for listening to this recording of revising of how to write a newspaper report in an exam.